Oh, hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending on which part of this beautiful country that you're in. You're watching Rebel Roundup. It's our daily news and commentary live stream hosted by me and a rotating cast of co-conspirators, I'll call them. Today is my friend and colleague, Tamara Ugolini. Tamara, how's it going?
Hey, Sheila, pretty good, thanks. We look like Christmas today, so that's lots of fun, green and red.
Yeah.
How are you doing over there?
Oh, I'm great. It's actually kind of warm out today. It's above zero. Who knows how long that's going to last? It makes for muddy animals, that's for sure. But I won't complain because it'll be back to minus 40 in the blink of an eye a couple times before spring.
Yeah, this is like the fake spring right before the actual
Right.
spring. We'll get a few more
Right.
hits of winter.
This is pre-spring disappointment. You know what? I'm going to actually hand it over to you and you can tell everybody what we're doing here today and how they can get involved in the show. And I'm just going to poke over and out of the corner of my eye, look at the topics because I was busy and I never got around to that. So you do that and I'll do this and we'll meet back here in a second.
Sounds good. All right. Well, welcome everyone. As Sheila mentioned, this is our daily live stream where we bring you the news items of the day. Today here in Ontario, of course, we have our snap election final polling day. So there will be another live stream tonight that you won't want to miss out. I believe we're starting at 9 p.m. Eastern, same place. And so we will keep an eye there on the watch parties and the polling results. So please come back at that time. But for today, we are streaming a few different platforms. So we are over on our usual Rumble, the free speech platform. And then we're also streaming on X and YouTube. We have recently been remonetized on YouTube. So we have to be careful sometimes with some of the more sensitive topics on how exactly we word things. It's finicky like that, but we're going to try to continue to keep up the momentum with that monetization to help us bring you our independent journalism, keep the lights on, and keep our equipment flowing. So if you are joining us over on YouTube, I think it's called a super chat. You can give us a $5 donation or more if you feel so inclined, and we will read your comment, tip, or otherwise on air. And it's a great way to have our audience be part of our live stream and get some commentary on whatever it is you think is important today. So maybe some of you have some election comments if you're in the wonderful province of Ontario, not Ontariable. You can let us know what you think heading to the polls today or this evening. And then, of course, if you're over on Rumble, you can give us what's called a Rumble rant. And I should actually mention before we get into the topics that I think you can also post dated give us a super thanks or something on YouTube. So there's a little bit more options on YouTube for you to be able to support us, which is why we are trying to hold on to the monetization as long as we can. Who knows how long it will last, let's be honest, but we're here for it for right now. So without further ado, let's get into some of the topics that we have. And of course, Trump and the 51st state is continually top of mind when it comes to what is happening in North America and of course here at home in Canada. So
It's
once again,
it's crazy. Yesterday, there was an announcement that the tariffs were gonna be delayed until April 1st, 2nd, something like that, and
mhm.
now they're back on for March 4th. So it's just day-to-day chaos in the economy, and we have absolutely no leadership in Ottawa. Um, a crisis so dire, they're considering delaying the next election, but not so dire that they should get their asses back to work in the House of Commons. So Trump announced this morning plans on tariffs on Mexico and Canada for March 4th, while doubling existing 10% tariffs on China. That second part makes a little bit more sense. And you know what? We've done nothing since the first delay of the tariffs. Like, they haven't gone back to work in the House of Commons. They haven't done anything really significant on the border. They appointed a border czar. I haven't heard anything from him since the day he did the press announcement saying, yeah, it's me. They've done absolutely nothing. It's just all up to the provinces to try to save themselves. And so thanks, Liberals. Thanks, Trudeau.
Yeah, he appointed Kevin Boissonnault or
Yeah.
Boisseau, and he said he was going to facilitate having a bunch of conversations, and that he was looking toward maybe going to the U.S. the following week, which I think would be this week. And again, crickets. Just haven't heard anything to that effect. But nonetheless, Trump has been, of course, trolling Canada relentlessly, our supposed leaders, with the 51st state talk to make Canada part of the United States. I don't know how exactly logistically that would work, but I think that we should obviously just be strengthening our relationship and our trade amongst one another rather than escalating these tensions. And we'll get into a little bit more about how some of these radical socialist leaders are working to escalate the tensions instead of being diplomatic, as we've seen with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe. So they seem to be really leading the charge for the whole country in how to mend these troubled waters with the Trump administration. But yeah, so Trump here has stated that he's going to reinstate or has set a date now to put these tariffs on Canada, March the 4th. So that will be next week. I guess he apparently misspoke when he said it would be April 2nd, which would be so funny, or not funny, but sad for
Yeah.
Canadians, because that would be the very next day after we get our 20% hike on the carbon tax on April the
Yes.
1st. It's not an
Yes.
April Fool's Day joke, despite what many of us thought when this was all being implemented a year or two ago. So on April 1st, Canadians get taxed on carbon even more than we already are, thanks to the outgoing Liberals. So maybe if there's an election before then or something happens on the federal political landscape, that will change. But anyway, Canadians are really being hit left, right, and center, whether it's from our own government or foreign governments, in terms of the amount that we pay in taxes. It is absolutely insane. We pay more than all of our basic living necessities like food, clothing, and shelter combined to the
Yeah.
government, who's currently not even working because government or parliament rather has been prorogued since the beginning of January. So they're not even working, and we're still paying this insane amount of taxes. And now we're going to get tariffs on any goods that are both imported and exported. So every which way you look at it, it is a mess, a dumpster fire here in Canada. And then, I had a little bit of hope that that court ruling the motion to unprorogue Parliament would be successful, and the judge would hear the merits of that argument of how important it would be to get our government back to work on the federal level. And then they said they would rule on it, I think, either the day before or the day that
Yeah.
the Parliament will be back anyway. So that was a big nothing burger.
Yeah, I mean, we're being just wrung out as taxpayers. Like I don't know how anybody has anything left. And if you had the misfortune of watching the Liberal debate, I did, of course, because it's my job. And I would understand if nobody else did watch because it was just a boring, soul-sucking event. But none of these people have any real solutions. Like to address the housing crisis, this was Freeland's idea, because she doesn't realize that out of control immigration is the problem, and green energy regulations. Those are the problems with the housing crisis. No, her thought, and this is why she destroyed an entire section of Reuters when she was in charge, and why our economy is in such shambles. It's because she was in charge of it. She said, "Oh, we're just going to open up free trade schools, free trade schools, to make sure that we have more carpenters, electricians, plumbers. We're just going to graduate a bunch of them, and they'll build the houses." Does she think that it's a problem with supply of labor in the trades that's driving up the cost of housing? And by the way, there's no such thing as a free trade school. If first of all, if your trade certificate is free, it's actually worth nothing, right? If there's too many of you out there, it drives your wages down, and nobody works for free. It just means the government's going to pay for it. The government doesn't have any money. It's you. The problem with the cost of housing is not the labor cost of housing. It is everything else, but mostly demand. This was her big idea. No wonder our economy is an absolute mess.
Well, and I always go back to the time that she told Canadians that they could deal with inflation by canceling their Disney Plus memberships.
$14.99.
$14.99 a month. I think that will buy you exactly like 2 or 3 flats of strawberries these days, maybe not even. Yeah. And I don't know if anybody has multiple children, but they're gone in one snack. So
one day.
yeah, thanks, Chrystia Freeland, our finance minister, for that, just hitting it out of the ballpark advice. But Trump is still clinging to the fact that he thinks, I don't know if he's serious, but he thinks Canada wants to join. And as I've mentioned here before, I'm here for a conversation because the way that our country has been run into the ground by the Liberals and by various levels of government the last several years, Canadians are desperate for a change, and they're willing to consider this otherwise crazy talk, to get back to having some form of livable life again that you can sustain, that you can afford to live and eat and feed your family and heat your home and put clothes on your kids' back.
Maybe save some money. Like instead of just living hand to mouth every single month. I was talking to Chris Sims, and she said like most Canadians, or more Canadians than not, are $200 away from insolvency. And the average cost of a cart of groceries for a family of 4, and I don't have a family of 4, I have more, and so do you, Tamara, is $300 a week. So most Canadians are less than a cart of groceries away from insolvency in this country, let alone the idea that you could save some pennies and have like a buffer in your bank account. The Liberals just don't think you're entitled to that.
Yeah, every which way you look at it, it is crazy. So when Trump says these things that would otherwise be outlandish, he now has the ear of desperate Canadians who are going, well, what would that actually look like? And what does that actually mean? And would it benefit our ability to stay afloat and keep our head above water? And as you've mentioned, perhaps even put a little bit aside at the end of each week or each month. But we have these comments here from, I think this was yesterday. Yeah, Trump yesterday, discussing that there is, in fact, a movement in Canada to join the United States.
Can I shift our attention to Canada real quick?
Yes, please.
Last week, I spent some time with 2 government officials for Canada. I was asking them how realistic is it that Canada would be the 51st state.
Yeah.
And they told me there is a path. Alberta is first, and if they sign on, Saskatchewan would follow, and then you go west to British Columbia. There is a movement in Canada to join us. I want to get your thoughts on that and how that's proceeding right now.
So it's true. Thank you, Brian. It's true. A lot of people in Canada are liking becoming our beautiful, cherished 51st state. They'll have to pay much lower taxes. They'll have the ultimate security. You know, they don't pay very much for security right now because they rely on us.
Can I shift our attention?
You know what? He is right, although I don't think he wants all of BC. And I think probably has run the numbers. Like, yeah, I'll take Alberta, I'll take Saskatchewan. We'll start there because otherwise you just get a country of Democrats. Unfortunately. And it's nice. It's nice to hear Trump talk about Canada as beautiful and cherished. Like he would cherish Alberta and Saskatchewan, because right now in Confederation, we're treated like garbage, like absolute garbage. We're flyover country. We're yokels. We're a colony from which you extract our resources, then tell us to shut up. And so it tickles the ear to hear somebody speak so nicely about us, because Justin Trudeau doesn't talk nice about us like that.
No, he calls us a bunch of colonizers, supremacists that
genociders.
that have this systemic racism that we must all disband from our unconscious bias and adhere to perpetual and incessant diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, and have it be Pride season all year round. Like it's absolute nonsense. And the gaslighting that Canadians have been subjected to by our own government, especially the last few years, the fallout of COVID-19 and how it was handled, and pandemic response things, coupled with all of the tumultuous things that are happening, that just the taxes alone, as we've mentioned, Canadians are feeling it where it hurts the most, and that's in their pocketbooks. And more Canadians are saying, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. We've been gaslit by our leaders, named and shamed as though, you know, we have some sort of systemic unconscious bias to try to unpack perpetually. And someone is talking very sensibly and reasonably down to our southern neighbor counterparts. Hey, guess what? Now that's gleaned the ear of Canadians who feel perpetually slighted by the government. So that's where we are. And then it's called, you know, that we're these extremists because we want to join the United States as the 51st state. And that's not what it's really about here. It's about being slighted by your own government, ignored, gaslit, name called. They froze the bank accounts of the most patriotic people who gathered in the nation's capital in January and February 2022 to protest the overreach and totalitarian measures the government was taking against its own people, that just escalated those totalitarian measures and implemented wartime legislation to stomp on and unleash the horses onto grandmas out protesting. They jailed Tamara Lich for 52 consecutive days at the end of it all, for saying things like hold the line. This is craziness what's happened in Canada, and Canadians feel slighted. And now all of a sudden all of these premiers and the Liberals are about Team Canada. And meanwhile, the people who were actually Team Canada have been completely slighted by the government. And they're like, well, actually, you're on your own now. And you froze all of our bank accounts and literally physically, violently assaulted us when we tried to protest you politically. So Canadians are in a really rough spot right now. And that's where you start to glean the ear of people who hear things like, hey, we'll lower your taxes. And they're like, that sounds amazing. We're here for it.
Yeah. Or when we've got a guy who's saying, yeah, we'll build your pipelines. Like Keystone XL runs from Alberta to refineries in the United States. And he's like, yeah, let's get that going. We like you guys. You know what that's like for an Albertan to hear? Justin Trudeau has said repeatedly there's no business case for natural gas exports. And then Trump goes and strikes a deal with the people who came a calling to us first. How these people have said for a decade, we're not going to let you build a pipeline. There's no social license for it, whatever the hell that means. And then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, we got to build pipelines now because of Trump." How about because of Canada? You should have built one 10 years ago, you big jerks. And we're supposed to come along and kiss your butts now, cozy up to you, save the day, put ourselves out of work because you're fighting the big fascist Trump. Like, get bent, get bent. We wanted out of this relationship a long time ago, or at least wanted a rejig of the relationship. And now we're supposed to show up to save the day. Get out of here. like
And
there's a
this,
reason. There's a reason why, sorry to interrupt, 1 in 3 Albertans is like, we'd be better off going this alone. So when they teach or when they preach that this is just a fringe movement of people who are in the West who are over Canada, it's like 1 in 3. That's a lot. You can get a majority government in parliament, like with a little bit more than that.
and don't forget that these tariffs are a result of fentanyl and mass immigration that is unfiltered and largely unchecked. I think we have something like 400,000 illegal immigrants that are supposed to be sent back to their home countries that are just unaccounted for in the country.
Yeah.
That the CBSA, the Canadian Border Agency, is just not able to locate. And Canadians have been saying, "Hey, we want our streets cleaned up. Community safety is being compromised by open air drug use, illicit drug use, the crime, the violence, all of the things that go with addicts trying to fuel their addiction." Because we don't have any sort of actual wraparound services, as the left likes to say, or this idea of safer supply of toxic, deadly drugs on our streets being diverted to our youth and also diverted into the United States. And it took another government, a foreign government, Trump, to say, "Hey, Canada, clean up your streets and get your immigration under control because it's trickling now into our country and we not want no part of it." And Canadians are like, "Yay, finally someone is listening to us because we've been trying to call on our government to do this for several years now, and they've just ignored it, said, no, the safer supply, it's safer. So you be quiet over there because you're stigmatizing the drug addicts and you're being a racist for wanting to have some checks and balances in place with immigration because immigrants are coming here and they don't have anywhere to live or to work. They cannot get around because our infrastructure was not built to reach this kind of capacity." And instead of bringing up those logical, reasonable, rational arguments against open borders and against the idea of safer supply, Canadians have, again, just been slighted, smeared, name called, and belittled by the government. So all of this stuff is really in alignment with a lot of what Canadians have been saying and been ignored over for the last few years. And so when you have someone who comes in and says, "Hey, I am listening to you," that sounds really appealing at this point in our country.
Yeah.
And I see we have.
We've got a couple more. Ask me how I feel about Canadians getting tariffs while in Alberta we've been doing our job. You know, like because Justin Trudeau and the rest of Team Canada and Doug Ford can't bring the heat down, everybody's getting tariffs. And in the meantime, we're in Alberta saying, we've been dealing with the border. We've got our little border patrol. We've been dealing with fentanyl tougher than anybody in the entire country. We have a recovery-based focus on this. We will forcibly confine our drug addicts if it means getting them off the street so that they don't hurt themselves and other people anymore. But because we have the big amplified voices of Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau, our national economy is going to be hammered. And again,
I think
what are we still doing here?
I think Danielle Smith's approach, the Alberta Premier's approach, is the only reason why the tariffs have been pushed off and pushed off and pushed off.
Yes.
Because I suspect that Trump sees that effort being put forward and was hoping that it would, come out and manifest similarly in other provinces and on the federal level. Instead, we got this border czar who made an announcement like, "Here I am to have conversations and I can't wait to do this important work," and never to be seen again. So now we're getting the threat again is being reignited that they will be imposed on March the 4th. We have a super chat here from J Tama 8318. Thank you very much. Who gives $5. I try to catch your videos. I know you are focused on Canada, but do you have US news also? Sometimes, and I mean, obviously, when it affects Canada, we will,
Sure.
like we are right now, we're discussing it. But we're a small skeleton of a Canadian news outlet with some prongs in Australia and in the UK and a little bit in the US, but we cannot compete with the US media. You guys have so much more diverse
Conservative news. Yeah.
options when it comes to conservative news, that we just don't have the capacity to compete with that at this point. Maybe in the future, that would be a great conversation to have. But I think that is largely why we focus on Canada, because we don't have a lot of counterpoints to our compromised liberal government funded mainstream media. So there's so much going on in Canada right now that we really have to tailor and focus our efforts here, because no one else is doing the work that we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move on to Jagmeet Singh, who is absolutely nothing and nobody except Justin Trudeau's biggest enabler. Our country is a mess in no small part because of him, and he is the leader of the fringe third party in this country, probably going to lose his own seat. And yet, he thinks that he is going to decide who gets to come to Canada as part of the G7 meetings that are hosted here in Alberta in beautiful Kananaskis. Now, God willing, we will have a new prime minister and it won't be Mark Carney by then, because I really don't want Mark Carney at the G7 in Alberta of all places. He'll be wearing his I'm from Alberta cloak that he likes to wear, but really you're from the UK at this point. But Jagmeet Singh wants to ban our largest trading partner, our biggest security ally, from the G7 meetings. What could possibly go wrong? You want 50% tariffs? Keep talking, idiot. Anyway, let's watch this.
I also believe we need to ban Donald Trump from attending the G7 summit.
So embarrassing.
Donald Trump should not be welcome here. Why would we invite someone who has threatened our very democracy, our very sovereignty? Why would we invite someone who has threatened our economic well-being? Why would we invite someone who threatens our allies and threatens the world's stability? Why would we allow a convicted criminal into our country? Why would we invite someone who has such disdain for multilateral organizations? Instead, what we should do is use the G7 summit as an opportunity to work with our allies on a plan to resist Donald Trump and his dangerous threats to the world. I also believe we need to ban Donald Trump from attending the G7.
Okay, that's good. So, we got to ban Donald Trump because he's a convicted felon on a political conviction. But he's perfectly fine with the radical Hamas lunatics on the streets of Canadian cities every single weekend, threatening Jews, celebrating an outlawed terrorist organization. And he seems perfectly fine with the hundreds of thousands of unvetted illegal migrants roaming our country, but he's worried about Donald Trump. We don't get to do anything. We're not in charge of anything, Jagmeet Singh, not anymore.
I also find it's very ironic and hypocritical that he thinks Trump is threatening our democracy. Meanwhile, him and the Liberals have had this unofficial coalition literally stealing our democratic process in Parliament for the last 2 years almost, or over 2 years now, that they have unofficially created this, or officially created this pact between the Liberals and the NDP, so they rule as a majority. These two fringe minority parties rule in our Parliament when it's actually functioning and not prorogued as a majority government, and thereby undermining and compromising our democratic due process by not giving a voice to the actual opposition, which would be a lot stronger if it had better leadership for the first few years during the pandemic. But also, if they didn't have this coalition, the Conservatives would be able to push back and push things through more appropriately and easier if there wasn't this coalition between the Liberals and the NDP. So, and then threatening the economic well-being. Well, we see how our economy is in Canada, and the fact that Canadians have to choose between heating their homes and putting food on the table. And I would say that that's our own government's doing, thanks to Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, who told Canadians to cancel their Disney Plus accounts and then froze their bank accounts when they disagreed with the way her government was conducting itself. But somehow this is all Trump's fault. Of course, Jagmeet Singh thinks this way.
Can I ask Olivia or whoever's behind the board in Toronto today to just do a Google image search of Kananaskis Canmore? Here's the reason I think they don't want Trump to go to Kananaskis and Canmore is because he already likes Alberta. We're his beautiful, cherished 51st state. If he sees the unrivaled natural beauty of Kananaskis Canmore, that man is not going to stop until he has it. That's what I think. They don't want Trump showing up. He's going to look at Kananaskis and say, these people like me. I like them. They've got lots of natural resources. They are like Aspen without the politics and Hollywood. Why wouldn't I love them? Like, this is just like a random picture, but the whole place is like this. It is really a truly unrivaled natural beauty. Trump's going to see it and say, yeah, we need those people.
Yeah, and I think he does see the wealth of our resources that have been completely compromised and underutilized by our government. Like, Canadians, yeah, we should not be struggling economically.
They tell me it's an oil and gas wasteland here in Alberta, but we just keep tripping over places like that all over the place. Let's go to Jagmeet
before we
Singh.
move on,
sorry,
Sheila,
go ahead.
from that one clip. I don't know if our viewers could see it because of the way that we were on the screen there while the clip was playing, but you can see some of the people in the audience when he says that, their faces. That's what I noticed and noted right away, was they're just like, wait, what is this guy even saying?
It gets better.
And you can tell. Yeah, it does get better. Here, let's look at this next one.
Yeah, this next one is great.
Zelensky isn't the one who is threatening to take over and invade other countries. That's Donald Trump. He gave superpowers to billionaires and cozied up to tech bros who spread disinformation. He got his surrogates, J.D. Vance and Elon Musk, to endorse the AfD in Germany, a party widely seen as supporting or embracing Nazi elements in its midst, a party, I'll remind you, that Pierre Poilievre's caucus members met with. Trump has then repeatedly threatened to invade other countries. I ask you a question. What do you call someone who threatens his allies, including with the use of military force? Someone who spreads disinformation and proclaims that he is above the laws and fires anyone who won't do as he says, even those in law enforcement and in the military. You call that person a fascist.
Sounds like he's describing Trudeau. Like, that phone call is definitely coming from inside the house when he's like, fires anybody who won't agree with him, even if those people are in law enforcement. He fired our AG, which is like the top in law enforcement, because she didn't agree with cutting a sweetheart deal for a corrupt Quebec-based liberal-linked company named SNC Lavalin, which now has to change its name. And it's funny how he talks.
Its name.
Yeah,
and
which now
they're being awarded the speed rail, the $1 billion,
the high-speed rail, the monorail.
Yes, so that's where SNC Lavalin ended up.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I like how he opened up by saying it's not Zelensky who doesn't believe in democracy. His term expired last April, I think.
Yeah.
Zelensky's did. He delayed the elections and continues to delay the elections because he's in war. So
his country's
and
been living under martial law for almost
Right.
5 years, I guess. And so
Right.
during this martial law declaration, Ukraine can't have elections. So it's Zelensky. That it's Zelensky it is. And he has banned opposition media, banned opposition parties, and
opposition church too. Opposition
Ukraine's
church is
supposed to
attacks
be
on. He
the
attacked a
beacon
Russian
of
Orthodox church.
democracy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're holding Ukraine as some sort of beacon of democracy as they literally ban elections, ban any opposition, and silence anybody who speaks out against it. I think
wonder
more
they
and more
like 'em.
people, thanks to the uncensored nature of some of these other platforms now, like X and Rumble, people can see more what these people are, instead of just what they say up on the world stage, but how they actually act and conduct themselves, and have other people pointing out, wait a minute, this isn't what this person's saying, doesn't match or line up with what is happening in reality. And more people can see that for themselves now. So yeah, Jagmeet Singh, I think, will be on his way out.
Yeah, I just don't even know who invited him. Like, it's the Montreal Council on Foreign Relations. What sort of diplomatic foreign relations work has he ever done? Like, it would make more sense, for example, to invite Danielle Smith, who has done some strong diplomacy work with the Trump administration. I was going to say incoming, but they're already there. Trump administration. She's done some actual work. Even Scott Moe has done some more work on this than Jagmeet Singh has done. He's done nothing but run his little mouth to the side of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I don't know. What was he doing there? Why'd you invite him? I have no idea.
Someone in the comments is asking to big truck Ben, I think it was, or Big Ben for Freedom. He was the guy that had the flag, the big crane in Ottawa, and he had the Canadian flag on it, and they tried to say his little weight that was holding the flag down
Right.
on the crane was a wrecking ball. He wrote in the comments here, isn't Jagmeet Singh barred from traveling to India because he supported like their radical uprising group? I don't know the whole story with that there, but yeah, Jagmeet Singh has a bit of a checkered past in this way. So if whoever's interested in going down that rabbit hole, please feel free.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a chat from Christy LB. Gives us $10. Christy, if you forgot to put your super chat in there, maybe somebody working behind the scenes for Rebel News can send that to us. But if you just wanted to give us $10 also, we really appreciate that. But if you have something to say, and just write it in the comments, and hopefully one of the guys will catch it. And we've got a quick message from our friends at Patriot Mobile. This is how we pay the bills on the live stream, because of course, as you know, we'll never take a penny from Justin Trudeau, and how could we hold him to account if we did? It sets us apart from the vast majority of the Canadian media landscape in this country, who are funded by the government. And so you should always read their coverage and watch their coverage with deep skepticism, because it could very well be a grant application. This one's from Patriot Mobile. Switch to Patriot Mobile for your cell phone service and get your first 2 months free when you use the promo code VICTORY. Offer expires this Friday, February 28th at 8 p.m. Central. Sign up now at patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT. And I trust that is for our American viewers, because even though Justin Trudeau campaigned on promising us lower cell phone prices, there are absolutely no newcomers into the Canadian cell phone market. There's a monopoly where 3 companies just can collude to keep your cell phone bill exactly what it would be at the other company. Neat little trick they did there. Okay.
So next, it looks like we have a clip of Trump pushing back on a reporter who asks him, isn't he targeting people with his executive orders? His response is just perfect.
So what do you say to people who worry that targeting an individual firm or individuals who aren't Jack Smith for his actions?
I've been targeted for 4 years, longer than that. So you don't tell me about targeting. I was the target of corrupt politicians for 4 years, and then 4 years after that. So don't talk to me about targeting.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect response to the nonsense that comes out of the mainstream media news's journalists' mouths. We also have, speaking of Carney, we mentioned him a little bit earlier, but he
And
seems
speaking
to
of
be.
bad journalists,
And
oh my
speaking of
God.
bad journalists, yeah. So Carney recently moved one of his management companies from Canada to the US. Back, actually, I think it was back in November when Trump first began the threats, the tariff threats on Canada.
Well, and it reminds me that okay, so Carney, I think he made the announcement October 31st, Halloween, and then it happened at the beginning of November. Carney was acknowledging by moving the head office of Brookfield Asset Management to the United States, knowing that his company would do better in the United States than under the policies that he was whispering in Justin Trudeau's ear for the rest of us. Anyway.
Right, because don't forget, Mark Carney has been an economic advisor to Trudeau for the last half of a decade, and was especially important to the Liberals during their COVID response plans, financial plans, or lack thereof, I guess. But nonetheless, he moved his asset management company from Canada to the States, and then he lied about it. And here we have the CBC's David Cochrane basically just saying that no big deal, nothing to see here, folks.
It's unclear to me the negative consequences of the Brookfield relocation. They're there because they want access to U.S. shareholders and U.S. stock indexes. It's unclear if there's job losses or tax losses to Canada. But the way he answered that question, his fingerprints were all over the move, and he answered in a way that he tried to distance himself from it. So is that dishonesty? Is that political inexperience? What is it? Jonathan, help me understand that. It's unclear.
I think it's pretty clear. Not only did he move his company to the US because obviously, as you've mentioned, Sheila, it would do better there. That has to inevitably compromise Canadian jobs when you move an entire company to another country. But so not only did he do that, but he lied about it. So what are you trying to cover up here? What are you trying to hide? I think that the Liberals basically just spent their entire debate time attacking the US and Trump as some sort of tyrant and predator, and stating that Canada needs to build this military alliance against the US and against Trump's actions, and again, under the guise of Team Canada. But then he lies about moving his company there because it's obviously better for the investment. Again, the hypocrisy that is on display with these people is absolutely insane.
Let us never forget who Cochrane is. Now, in the I think it was 2021, could be 2019. We've had so many election campaigns with Justin Trudeau. He's the guy who took the free poutine from Justin Trudeau. Does anybody remember that? And then asked, like, Justin Trudeau's like, here, have my poutine. And David Cochrane's like, yeah, thanks. Like, on the campaign trail, I think they're at some sort of weird farmer's market. And then very recently, or at least in December, CBC's David Cochrane got very upset that Pierre Poilievre would even talk about Canada's border crisis after Justin Trudeau told him not to. I just flipped that into the chat if you want to put this up. He's like, why is he talking about that? How dare he? Although not the same outrage reserved for Jagmeet Singh saying we should ban Trump from the entire country. We wouldn't want Pierre Poilievre to talk about issues facing Canada as Canada's official opposition, like opposing bad liberal ideas. That's kind of in the job description, but not for David Cochrane.
So Kate, on that, like all the national leaders get together in the cabinet room. That's where they met, apparently. And they were all asked to not say things like the border is broken. And in about 45 seconds, Pierre Poilievre says the border is broken. And then he leads off question period about the broken border.
Right.
This is exactly the sort of thing they're all being asked not to do because it helps the U.S. news cycle and helps the president-elect's argument.
he was making comments about the border well before that meeting.
Sure.
He had also done an entire media availability on Sunday where he talked about what he would do to fix the border. So he's not just coming out and saying the border is a problem and it needs to be fixed. He's also outlining a path for how it could be fixed and actions that the government could take. So it's not just identification of a problem. There's also a solutions roadmap that he's identified.
Yeah, compelling the speech of the very probably next Prime Minister of Canada. That sounds really great, but not surprised.
We wouldn't want the leader of the official opposition who is in campaign mode to say and do something that might hurt the Liberals. Like, excuse me, what? Also, it's the media's job to hold the government to account too, and not just take their poutines, as David Cochrane did. Like, he should be talking about the border problems too. He should think it's odd that the Prime Minister is telling the other party leaders to shut up about the problems the Liberals created. Instead, he's indignant. There he is taking the poutine. Didn't even think it was inappropriate. It was funny. It's jolly. That's a guy who obviously doesn't. Yeah,
he's fully taking the bite there too. Like that. Just eating someone else's food. No big deal.
This is weird.
All right. Well, that's the state of the mainstream media here in Canada for all of you who are wondering why we have to focus so heavily on Canadian events, because that's what you get there. And asking questions, just talking about that border czar for a moment, when they had that press release and the mainstream media was like, why did you pick the name czar? I'm over here just dying. Like, could you not think of anything better to ask this person during these times why they chose the name czar? It's just so lackluster at best.
Yeah.
But in other news, our Canada's greatest hockey player, Wayne Gretzky, has been under fire for being seen in photos and aligning himself with Trump. And I guess now this comes.
Man, by the way, like, the guy's a businessman. He owns hockey franchises. Why wouldn't he want to have a good relationship with the most business-friendly president of the United States in living memory? But since he was there at Mar-a-Lago, by the way, the Liberals went to Mar-a-Lago, but you don't see everybody losing their marbles about that. He went to Mar-a-Lago the way a lot of business leaders are, and that was enough to just basically have him canceled as a Canadian, despite like all the Stanley Cups and all of his good work for Canada. They're like, no, garbage him in the garbage, get in the bin. It's so stupid.
Team Canada is just like, we will disavow the great one, hockey's
the guy
greatest
who actually
champion.
was on the captain of Team Canada, by the way.
Team Canada is now disavowing the captain of Team Canada.
Yeah.
If you'd like to know the absolute irony and hypocrisy of these individuals. But anyway, so now Wayne Gretzky's cleared the air that he does not back this 51st state trolling rhetoric that Trump has been touting. And this comes from the Toronto Sun. Joe Warmington wrote this article, and I think it's the fourth paragraph down. He says, sad that Trump had to clarify that for some Canadians. Like, it is the attack mode that Canadians head into, and specifically this Team Canada. They just get so triggered left, right, and center. There is nothing you can't say that will not trigger Team Canada if you so much as disagree even slightly with the direction that they're heading, or point out their hypocrisy and nonsensical conduct over the last few years and how it doesn't align with a Team Canada approach. So here we are. This is apparently the news that we're having to address, is the fact that Wayne Gretzky, a retired Canadian hockey player who was the greatest at hockey, that we have to be concerned of whether or not he thinks that Canada should become the 51st state.
By the way, didn't you have a run-in with his brother as an OPP officer or something?
I did. Oh, that was so fun. And I'm so disappointed. Such a missed opportunity, because in the heat of the moment, I didn't realize that it was his brother. Yeah, and it was something weird too, because in that moment, that was when we went to drop off the petition at Tim's camp when they implemented their
Right.
COVID-19 vaccine mandate for children trying to attend their camps. And so we went all the way out to
There he was.
St. Thomas area, I think it was. It was out in the middle of nowhere to drop off the petition. And he shows up, and I was like, yeah, I was like, this guy looks so familiar, but there's no way I know this man. And I didn't see his name tag there until after. And I was like, no, I wonder what he would have thought, if he could draw any sort of comment from how Tim Horton, right, hockey's other greatest, would have thought about his corporation now implementing a vaccine mandate for underprivileged kids who are just trying to head off to summer camp, who perhaps that is the only thing that they have to look forward to all year. So definite missed opportunity there. I was so disappointed when I got back and noticed his name key. But yeah, really, he was great, by the way. He was a super friendly cop. He's like, so you haven't gone on the property? And I was like, nope. And he's like, do you intend to? I'm like, nope. They've already ran off, like scared little cockroaches back into the camp, the woman who came up to greet us initially at the gate. And he's like, okay, just stay off the property and good luck. And he was really nice and cool about it. So not surprised.
Yeah, that's funny. What was I going to say? I had something written down, but it doesn't. Oh, I had the Trump post actually, because I hope we all find friends as loyal as Donald Trump is to his. Because the man has experienced his fair share of disloyalty directed at him. But this is what he said. He's the greatest Canadian of them all, and I am therefore making him a free agent because I don't want anyone in Canada to say anything bad about him. He supports Canada the way it is, as he should, even though it's not nearly as good as it could be as part of the greatest and most powerful country in the world, the good old USA. He says that Wayne and Janet, his wonderful wife, love Canada, and they should only support Canada and whatever else makes the Canadian people and Governor Justin Trudeau happy. Like, he's funny, of course, but also, like, this is a good friend. You should have a good friend like Donald Trump. What a nice man.
Yeah, exactly. And then here in Canada, do you want to do a quick ad break, Sheila? Do we have an ad break, or
do we, Olivia?
Maybe we're running up against the clock and we should touch on. Yeah, okay. So let's do a quick ad break and then we'll come back and talk about some of the tumultuous times ahead for Toronto Pride.
Sad.
Oh.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
I've got a better idea than tariffs. What would an America First strategy for Canada-U.S. trade look like? Is there room for a Trump-style mega deal even bigger than Greenland? A dozen years ago, I wrote a best-selling book called Ethical Oil, The Case for Canada's Oil Sands, which made the liberal argument that the oil sands are the fair trade coffee of the world's oil industry. In my new book, Deal of the Century, I look at Canada-U.S. trade through an America First lens, and I come to the conclusion that far from putting tariffs on Canadian oil, Donald Trump should ink a 50-year, $13 trillion deal to buy all 170 billion barrels of Canada's oil sands, shutting out China and giving Canada the means to pay for a rebuilt military. And as for yanking Trudeau's chain, well, he'll be gone as prime minister in a few weeks, but I've got a better suggestion for how Trump can slap Trudeau around a bit without hurting America's economic interests. That's in the book too. Get your copy now at dealofthecenturybook.com. And trust me, Trudeau doesn't want you to see this.
All right.
All right.
It's the end of
Toronto.
No, I was going to say it's the end of DEI, at least the beginning of the end of DEI, I think, in Toronto, of all places. with the Pride Parade of all places. I'll let you explain, but this gives me great hope.
The capital of DEI in Canada.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's probably a toss-up between Toronto and Ottawa. But all right, this article comes from the Toronto Star. Toronto's Pride 2025 Festival in peril as large sponsors pull funding. And of course, it is because of the US and their backlash against diversity. So Pride Toronto's executive director told the Star that the companies will no longer be supporting Pride because their mandate has changed. 3 of its sponsors pulled their funding amid a massive corporate push against diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the US. So I guess these are US based companies. And Kojo Modeste, he's the them are the executive director at Pride Toronto. Told the Star that companies which operate on both sides of the border have informed Pride Toronto they will no longer support Pride because their mandate has changed. And this is gaining more traction after, of course, US President Donald Trump, it's all his fault, issued an executive order in January banning such programs in the US government, calling them illegal and discriminatory. So Pride Toronto is the nonprofit organization behind the annual, and here is the alphabet 2SLGBTQI plus, I guess there's no A anymore, parade. They do not disclose the names of the sponsors as they hope to continue to persuade them to continue their funding. But what is really interesting here is that Pride Toronto doesn't have the very best or ethical track record. And I'm going to put a link here into our chat to refer back because last year, if I can get my tabs in order here, last year, Pride Toronto had to actually repay over $500,000 to the federal government after they were found to be misusing the funds that they were granted. A total of $1.8 million they received last year for the Pride Parade from the federal government, and they had to repay just over 500,000 of it because they misused and misappropriated the funds. But I mean, that is an astonishing number that the federal government, which is us, the Canadian taxpayer, supplements Pride Toronto to the tune of almost $2 million for their weekend, 2-day, maybe it's a 3-day weekend event where they dress inappropriately and flaunt their nudity, oftentimes in front of children.
Yep.
This is I'm happy to see some of the sponsors pulling out of this, and perhaps if the Pride something like the Pride Festival can't fund its own operations and it relies on the government under their guise of DEI initiatives and private sponsors who are now saying this isn't really a priority of ours. If they can't stay afloat, then I say good riddance.
Yeah, you know what? Pay for your own parade. I'm tired of the forced compliance with this stuff. I like though the passive aggressive hint at blackmail in the middle of this. They say they are not disclosing the names of the sponsors brackets yet. As it hopes to persuade them to continue their funding. So basically, give us the money back, or we're going to name you, and we're going to do to you what we just did to Wayne Gretzky. They also go on to say that 2 sponsors were gold partners, contributing at least $150,000 in cash and in-kind goods. And another was silver, contributing more than $100,000. Just the sheer money involved here is outrageous.
They say more than half of Pride Toronto's yearly income of approximately $5.5 million comes from sponsors. So guess where the other half is coming from? Yeah, that's right, the taxpayers.
Exactly. Oh, don't worry though. TD Bank is, they say they've supported Toronto Pride for 20 years and they're committed to supporting them this year. I hope this is
Fund
the
your
end
own
of.
sex parade and leave the taxpayer dollars out of it. If private sponsors are pulling out, well, guess what? Maybe that's because your cause isn't really worthwhile.
Yeah, can we just scroll up and show the image of that? The parade at the top? I mean, just look at that. Should any of us have to pay for this? I don't think so. We've got kafiyas, we've got guys dressed as peacocks, scantily clad guys dressed as peacocks, and the hypochondriacs of the world. I don't want to pay for any of this. I just think that there's a better use of the taxpayers' fund. They want to have their little half naked party. Okay, whatever. But just don't make me pay for it.
Yeah.
And of course, Loblaw's group of companies, they are going to pony up a bunch of cash as they always do. The Westons pretty cozy with Justin Trudeau, and you cannot walk into one of their stores, be it Shoppers Drug Mart or Superstore, without being told that this is a place where everyone's welcome, as if anybody is like, oh, they don't have a flag here? I'm going to Safeway. Like, it's just so stupid. But this is what the grocery stores are all about these days. I just can't wait for the end of having to assess the politics of your grocery store. I can't wait till that era is over. I'm just so sick of it.
I'm also old enough to remember when Toronto Pride Parade was just an afternoon thing. And it was like, a great time if you wanted to partake or go and watch some more freakish people out on display, probably not bring your kids. It was very much recognized as an adult only event. It took place in the neighborhood, and that was it. It was an afternoon. When I was in university living in Toronto, I went to a pride parade, a few of them actually, and I never remember seeing any kids there. I remember it being just a small little street event parade. Now it has been so captured and radicalized into this massive event, takes over the entire downtown core. It takes over everything in Canada. Canada becomes its pride season now. It's not just like a small afternoon thing. And so this blowing all of this out of proportion, I think, has obviously backfired, as you see here. And just make Pride Parade a small afternoon event again.
Yeah, they have the entire season. Maybe it wouldn't require so much money if it wasn't a 3-month long ordeal. Like, just do your parade and fundraise for that. Don't reach into my pocket to do it. Maybe scale down. Maybe since you don't have all these big sponsors, just scale her down. Have a day like everybody else does. Instead, it's a summer-long celebration.
And maybe Kojo, the executive director, needs to take a little pay cut and find something else to do than make this a year-long salary-inducing endeavor of Pride Toronto.
Should be just a volunteer thing. Anyway.
All right.
I think we can wrap her up because you guys have the live stream, the Ontario election that nobody wanted live stream tonight. If you folks at home are on social media, I regret to inform you, or maybe I'm excited to inform you, it depends, that the Epstein files have been released today to independent journalists and influencers to pore over. There are photos of people holding them, Jack Posobiec and others holding these binders of the Epstein files. So if you are on X,
finally,
it's about to get Western over there. So buckle up. It's about time. And you know that there are prominent Democrats on there because they're being released now, right? Like, that's how you know. But anyways, I think we're gonna probably see some names of people that you didn't want to see on there, as is the case with these things. You're usually hiding in plain sight. Okay, I think that's it. Thanks, Tamara, for joining me on the show today. Thank you to everybody who pitched in, everybody who works behind the scenes at Rebel News to make sure the show is there for you to watch whenever you want to watch it. Tamara, tell us again about the live stream tonight.
Yeah, it starts at 9 p.m. Eastern, so right as the polls will close, and then we will be watching how voters voted. I think that it's pretty clear that the progressive Conservatives, Doug Ford, will again retain a majority government. But you never really know. So we'll see tonight as the polls close at 9 p.m. Eastern. So come back for that. And otherwise, we will see you here again, same time and place, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, for joining, and hold on to your critical thinking caps because PSYOPs are coming.
Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.